Welcome back. In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate the Bootstrap grid system. And the grid system is probably the number one reason that people use Bootstrap. The forms, the nav bars, the buttons are nice stylistic changes we can make with Bootstrap, but the Bootstrap grid system will act as the skeleton of our entire application. It's a really easy way for us to add structure and layout to our application. So let me show you a few examples of what you can do with the grid system. I have a few sites open from Bootstrap Expo. This first one here is a product page for a water pitcher. And as I scroll down, notice the layout here where we have 3 items side by side. And then also notice as I change size here, they scale down, and then when I hit tablet size, they stack on top of each other. So that's the Bootstrap grid system at work, as is this right here, where we have another similar effect. They scale, and then they stack on tablet and mobile size. Here's another example. This is an Icelandic musician named Olafur Arnalds, and as I scroll down on his site, we have some content that's built with the grid system here. As you can see, similar layout, but it's not just that. This is built with the grid system as well. This here, this content, these tour dates here, basically using the grid system, we can say that we want some content to take up 100% of the screen. And then we can also use it to say that we want each one of these to take up 25% of the width of the screen until we hit the mobile size or the tablet size, where they each take up 50 now. And then when we hit mobile, they each take up 100%. Same thing down here. It lets us divide the width of the screen into pieces and pick how many pieces we want each of our own elements to take up. And here's the last one we've seen already. It's called Creative Tim. And as we scroll down here, similar content here using the grid system, and here as well. So this is all done with the grid system, all of this. So really important, very exciting stuff. It helps us lay things out so easily compared to what we would have to do without Bootstrap. So we'll be using Bootstrap's grid system in pretty much every application we make using Bootstrap. And let me show you one of them. This is our Yelp Camp application. And notice that we have a grid of campgrounds, 4 across. And as I resize the screen, notice that they scale, and then we go to 2 across, and then down to mobile, we go to 1 across. And it's a really nice, easy to use mobile layout. So that's just one place where we'll use the grid system. Now let's get started on writing some code using the grid system. So I'll full screen this window and go back to getbootstrap.com. Under the CSS tab, we can click on grid system. There's quite a bit to the grid system, but I'm going to start by just pointing out a single number here, 12. This is really important to how the grid system works. So every container in Bootstrap can be divided into 12 different columns. And then using the grid system, we can pick how many of those 12 units each element should take up. So in this case, it looks like they have something taking up about 10 out of 12 units, and then over here, 2 out of 12 units. Or it might be 9 and 3, but they have some ratio where they have more out of those 12 on this left side, and then a small fraction out of the 12 on the right side. So if we go back to Yelp Camp here, this is our container right here. And each one of these, out of 12 units, each one takes up 3 units. So we end up with 4 equal columns. And then we shrink it down right here. Now they each take up 6 units out of 12. So again, that number 12, very important. Now let's go and write our very first grid. So I have a file I've made, grid.html. It's empty except for the Bootstrap CSS file. And to start, we need to define a container. Anytime we use the Bootstrap grid, it needs to be inside of a container. So class equals container. And the first thing we need to do is define another div with class equal to row. Inside of each row, we have 12 units to pick from. So what we're going to start by doing is just doing a 50-50 split. We'll have one div that takes up 6 out of 12, and then another div that takes up 6 out of 12. So let's do that now. We'll add a div, and then I'll also add my second div in. And right now it's just 2 divs that are empty. They're not going to work. But what I'll do is add a class to the first one. And this will look a little bit weird. Column large 6, And we'll do the same thing here. Class equals column large 6. Then we'll add some content in here that will just say column large 6. Same thing here. And as I do that, let's save. And we won't actually see very much. We won't see the grid itself. So to make that clearer, I'll define a class here inside of a style tag. What I'll do is define a class. I'll just call it pink. And I'll apply this class to our two divs so we can see them. Because right now they're just white, no border, and just a little bit of text. But if we add this in, so pink, and then we want background to be pink, and we'll do a purple border, 1 pixel, solid purple. And then we'll apply the pink class to these two divs. Each one takes up 6 units. Now we go back and refresh. There we go. You can see we have two divs that take up exactly half of the container. The container starts here and ends here. And we've divided it into 2. So now we can go back and play around a little bit more. And let's try adding in a third column. And this time we'll make the middle column 8 units, and then the left and right will be 2. So we'll end up, and I'll change these numbers here. There we go. We'll end up with a nice centered column in the middle, and then 2 smaller columns on the left and right that we could use for a sidebar or something. So that's a very basic concept underlying all of the Bootstrap grid system. We have 12 units going across whatever container we're working inside of, and we can designate those 12 units in any way that we want. So we could do 12 individual columns, each one column large 1, and we could do that 12 times, just like this. Make sure I don't lose count. There we go, and then we'll get rid of these 2 for now. And if I refresh, you'll see in one row we have 12 evenly sized columns. Each one takes up 1 unit. And then I'll also show you we can add other rows. So let's do that now. Div class equals row, and it will just go below this first row that we have. So inside of this one, let's do a div class equals column dash large, and let's do 4. So we'll split it up to 3 evenly sized units. So column large 4. There we go. Just like that. And let's go take a look now. And you can see we didn't apply the pink class, but we have 3 evenly sized columns that fall below the 12 evenly sized columns we created. So we could add in the pink class just to make it easier to see what's happening. And there we go. So this is just a simple example. We wouldn't actually have these pink boxes most likely on our site. But as you can see here, we have a grid where we have rows, and each row has 4 columns going across. Each one is 3 units wide. Or here on this Creative Tim site, we have 3 columns going across. Each one is 4 units wide. Same thing here, 3 columns going across. Here we have 4 columns. Each one is 3 units wide. So that's the very, very basics of the grid. In the next video, we'll talk about how to make the grid responsive and have different layouts at different sizes. Right now we've been working with column large 1. I haven't explained what the large means, and there are 3 other sizes, and we'll see those in the next video. And we'll also see how we can write nested grids where we can add another row inside of any of these columns and split that into a further 12 pieces.